there, this is Melanie Sepsic for Homeschooling Teens for Success, and today we are going to talk about evaluating the top 5 factors when considering whether or not you should homeschool your kids. A lot of people are taking or considering taking their kids out of the public schools if they haven't already due to COVID restrictions, and they're wondering, can I do this at home? So my goal is to help you figure that out, or at least ask the questions to see if it is something that would work for you. Before I do that though, if you at the end like this video, if you could hit the like button, that would be awesome. Also, if you haven't subscribed, I would love it if you did that, and you will get all my new content as I post it, which I'm trying to post at least once per week, if not more. Deciding to homeschool is how the age of your child. So if you have children that are pre-K or kindergarten age, I don't even think you need a file. Most states is still considered non-compulsory education, and you can do as you please. But do check your state laws for that to make sure. But it's always been that those are non-compulsory ages, and it's not required until they hit 6 years old, first grade. So look at that. If your kids are younger, homeschooling is definitely probably, I would say, more work, but the transition to homeschooling is really easy because they've never been anywhere before, or just a small preschool or that kind of thing. So making a decision at the young age is easy on the transition process, but harder on the homeschooling. It just typically will require more of you in the homeschooling venture. As your kids get older into elementary school and middle school, it's still fairly easy, but you do have to go through, and you'll have to check your state laws. hslda.org is a great place to go for that. And I'll put an article I have down in the links that has all of these links and information in it. In the high school years, it can be probably the hardest to transition, but hard doesn't mean impossible. Homeschooling, however, in the high school years is probably the easiest. You do have to keep your own records, or you can, depending on what program you use, you can pay to have somebody else do that for you. Some states have an umbrella program that will do that for you, but I would say the majority don't. It would be up to you unless you found somebody else to do that for you. But it's so not a big deal that that was probably one of my big reasons when my kids hit that age where I really questioned. I'd been homeschooling all along, and I questioned, is this something that I want to do? And the biggest fear factor was the homeschool high school record keeping, and I don't know why, because it is not hard at all. So, and I keep pretty good records, and I'm pretty meticulous with that, and it still is not hard. I will have more videos, so if you check out my videos, if I haven't made that video, I will be making that video. Also, I have articles about that in my blog, which I have listed below. So, know that. My 2 things of, I guess, warning on your child's age is, number 1, if they're really against being homeschooled, if they're older, even into the older elementary, middle school, high school years, do take that into consideration and work through that with them. You know, sometimes you can get them to do a buy-in for a certain period of time and see how it's going, and that works well. Do know, though, if they're in high school and you pull them out of the public school in particular, not necessarily a private school, it's very hard to get them back into the public school without losing that time. Public schools don't want to take high school homeschool credits at all. They're not in favor of that. Even if you put them in essentially a private school type of homeschool, like where they go and it's pretty much a scholars program, or like I think Veritas Academy has one, or I know someone who used a college for their homeschool, high school, and they didn't want to take those for credits. So if you do pull them out at the high school level, get some sort of written agreement before you do so, if you plan on putting them back or think you could put them back. Now, in saying all of that, like I said, homeschooling in high school is super easy, and there are things that you can do so you don't have to put them back into that environment if they don't accept them back in. And some of that is even in their last 2 years, they could attend a local community college and get both high school and college credits for those classes. So that is another really great option that also helps them work toward a college degree. It takes off some of those beginning classes that you have to take in college. So keep that in the back of your mind as well. But those are all things to consider regarding your child's age when making the decision to remove them from school and homeschool them. The second thing, is considering your finances, your family finances. On this, I have done a video called The Surprising Cost of Homeschooling, and you can check that out in my channels page. You should see it right there. But the best way to explain this is I really do not think homeschooling is any more expensive than sending your kid to a public school at all. My husband and I were recently laughing about how much money we saved in the whole COVID crisis because we weren't going out to eat, we weren't going shopping because we can't stand wearing a mask, and we live in a state where it's actually mandated. And so there's a lot of ways that we've saved money. But when we thought about it, there's a lot more ways we've spent money because we've done some home projects, and they're all things that will improve the value of our house and be good, but it's not like we've saved tons of money. We have spent some of that saved money elsewhere. So basically that's where homeschooling fits in. So you save money, you spend money on curriculum, but you save money by your kids not needing to have the expensive wardrobe, all the supplies the school requires, and then all the peer pressure they get for the electronics and this and that they want to buy and whatnot. So there are, and meals, I mean, it's a lot easier to feed them at home than to send bagged lunches with all those little prepared food type of things. So you do save money, and I think at the end of the day you would probably find it a wash, especially given that if you buy curriculum, you can get some fairly inexpensive, even completely online curriculum. So check out that blog post and that video, or that video, either way, for ideas and information there. So and the other thing to consider is, if you are a double income family and you decide to homeschool, are you giving up one of those incomes? Now, I will say you don't necessarily need to. It is a lot harder in elementary school. I have known people, though, that have done the homeschooling around their work schedule, even people who work 12-hour shifts in the medical field 3 or 4 days a week, and so they homeschool on the days, even Saturdays, the days that they're not working. And when they take their kids to the babysitter, then the child does reading or some things that don't necessarily require teaching but are still very educational and good for the kids at the babysitter. So it is doable. You just have to know that you're going to have those expenses. Now, when you get to high school, it's much easier because unless there's issues with your child in the high school ages, they can stay by themselves, they can do their work, and you just have to, just check in with them and make sure that it's getting done, that kind of thing. For a few of our classes, we use the Ron Paul curriculum, which is great because it is, they can do it on their own. It's a self-taught model, and they learn a lot, and it prepares them for CLEP tests and whatnot. So that's just an option, but high school homeschooling is easier. You can work away from home, you can work while you're at home. and you can do that. Now, if you're already at home, then you'll find it no problem whatsoever, I don't think, because, again, I do some teaching. I probably do more teaching than is necessary, but I do Spanish. Actually, not really. I just pretty much teach Spanish because I do sit with them while we do an online finance program, but I'm not teaching. I'm just listening with them because it's a subject I enjoy. So really, I'm just teaching one class, and we do our Bible curriculum together too. So I have those two in the morning, and that's pretty much it, and I'm able to work the rest of the day. So it is totally doable in that realm for high schoolers, so really easy in the high school level. The third factor to consider is where you live. So if you live, again, I'll have links in this post below to an article, but also HSLDA will list the level of regulation and what's required to homeschool in your state, and I really highly recommend checking that out. There are highly regulated states, and there are states that have almost no regulation, and you'll want to see, and it doesn't mean if you live in a highly regulated state that you should abandon the thought. Just know what you're in for, and know what you need to compile. I compile way more than what I need to, but that's just so if I would ever have any problem, I have all the documentation easily available. And so HSLDA is a big help for knowing what you need for your state. So then the next factor to consider or just to think through is the lifestyle changes. Now, homeschooling is, the best way to describe it is that it is a total lifestyle change. I love it. I'm at home with my kids. I get to spend time with them, that kind of thing. But it is a lifestyle change. It's different than going to a private school. It's different than going to a public school. If you do, there's a lot of homeschool groups, co-ops. It doesn't even have to be a co-op. It just get-togethers, and a lot of homeschool local Facebook groups will share where those are at. So you can definitely get involved with a homeschool community or a community of people who homeschool. But just know that it is a lifestyle change, and if you have all been out of the house every day, being home all day is a change-up, although I guess most people now are more familiar with that change-up given the last 6 months with the whole COVID thing. But I think the hardest part for people new to homeschooling to get used to is, the constant, because you have people in your home, you do have to deal with more messes, things not being, as tidy or neat, and that may not bother some people, but completely bother others. So there are ways to get around that. Of course, setting up like for us, we put everything, the whole house, at least the living areas, look really clean at night. And 2 of my kids' bedrooms look pretty good. My boys, not so much. But getting those cleaned up at night, and that way when we wake up in the morning, we wake up with a fresh start, and we can go about our day and then clean it up at night. So that's what works for us, but it is something to think through, to get used to plan for, trying to make meals when you're homeschooling. Again, if your kids are doing homeschooling through a program and you're more freed up, that's not so much of a big deal. If you're working and homeschooling, it does become a little bit harder, but there are ways to work around that, and it's just something to think through. So, and the last, the 5th factor to work through when considering homeschooling is facing opposition. Now, there's 2 kinds of opposition, and I'm going to define them for you. The first kind is internal opposition, and that's within your family, your spouse, your kids. And again, like I said, you know, sometimes people resist change, so, you know, just getting some buy-in from your kids is a good idea, especially as they get older and into the teenage years. You know, really consider if a teenager is dead set against it, consider whether this is the best move for you, because they are the ones that are going to be doing the work, and that's to be taken into consideration, as well as if your spouse is completely against it. If you don't have a spouse, you're a single parent, then, you know, as long as you don't have issues in some sort of divorce decree, you should be good to go. But if you have a spouse that is dead set against it, I would really caution you from moving forward on this, because it will. You need that internal support from your spouse. Now, what I would consider external support is, even if they live with you, grandparents, and pretty much anybody else outside your immediate nuclear family of you, your spouse, and your kids, and that happens all the time. People say things, people you know, have lots of questions, not always framed in the most conscientious way. Aren't your kids going to be unsocialized? No, they're not. You're probably better than 30 teenagers to socialize your children. I think what they mean is a different question, but that's not the question they ask. There's a whole host of external opposition that you may face. Obviously, if you're removing them from a public school, do what your state says as far as sending in a notice of intent to homeschool if that's what's required. And you'll probably not be dealing with them again. But like we said before, in the one of the earlier factors there, but just know that you will. You likely will face opposition, and that's why it's so important for you and your spouse to be doing this together, because it makes that a lot easier. And just answer questions kindly and don't give too much information is usually my thing. And I always tell people it's a year-by-year decision, and you know, it is. I mean, things could change. I mean, chances are it won't, but you know, this is our decision, that sort of thing. But expect that you will face opposition. Expect that people will say rude things, and that's just got to be okay. If that's going to really tear you up inside every time, then it's something to consider whether or not this is the right move for you and your family. So I think that's it. I think that wraps up the factors to consider when making the decision to homeschool. I hope this has been helpful. Like I said, if you like it, hit the like button. If you have questions, put those in the comments below. And also, if you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon, you'll be notified of future videos that I put out. So that's it. Great. Thank you.